Good morning, everyone. Apologies for starting a few minutes late here. My name is Barbara Griffin. I'm chair of the House Election Law Committee. We have a number of public hearings scheduled this morning that begin at 9:30, and I see we have a number of people signed up to speak on bills, and I think we might also have a class. Do we have a class here this morning? Well, welcome to the Greater Nashua Leadership Group for this year from their chamber. Welcome to Reps Hall. This is the longest standing hall in the country where legislative business is still done. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all to where we try to get business done. Of course, with COVID, the House of Representatives is not regularly meeting here, but when we do, every one of these seats is occupied. They are assigned, which is a great help because when you want to try to find another member, you need to know what seat number they're in because believe it or not, when all these seats are filled, it's pretty hard to see who is where. And if you look down at your arm, you will see a number that's on the arm there. That is the seat number, and you are in a particular section. And at one of our great benefits for being a legislator here in New Hampshire, besides the $100 a year pay, is we can get a license plate that we pay for, and that license plate will have our seat number on it. So when you drive around and see a legi plate that has some number combination, that's what you're looking at, is an elected member of the legislature, and that is their seat number. I personally have never put my plate on my chair, on my car, not that I wouldn't be proud to, but I will tell you it's also a very effective way of calling the Speaker's office or the President of the Senate to complain about somebody's driving. So we hear that a lot in session about seat number, whatever. Maybe you should have been driving a little better one day. Also, as we stand here in the hall, I want you to take note of the 5 portraits behind us. A lot of you are here for what you consider to be, and we consider to be, constitutional business. And of course, the gentleman on the wall behind me had a big hand in all of that. And one of those portraits was actually partially paid for by pennies. Anybody know who that might have been? I know one person who does. And who would that be? And what particular person would that have been for? So that little trivia fact about a portrait with pennies paying for it for Abraham Lincoln, along with other facts about what is here in the State House, you can find out by getting the little self-guided tour book down in our visitor center. And it's a great way to spend an afternoon, and the State House is, of course, open. I have delayed here long enough. I would like to begin our business, but before we do, I ask that you join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's nice. The first public hearing this morning is on HB 1484. The prime sponsor will be here shortly. So in order to introduce the bill, to get it procedurally in front of the committee, one of our own members is going to introduce us. I recognize Representative Ross Berry to introduce HB 1484. After he introduces the bill, I will be calling on people to speak who have signed up. If you want to speak on a bill, you're going to fill out a pink card that's out in the lobby before you come in the room. And I'm going to ask that your comments, we're going to try to keep them to maybe 4 minutes. I might give you a 3-minute warning because I want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. Thank you. Welcome, Representative Sweeney. Excuse me. Whoops. Wow. Representative
Just starting
Barry.
the day off like that. All right. Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Representative Ross Berry. I represent the town of Litchfield, Southern Manchester, Wards 8 and 9. I'm here today to introduce HB 1484FN as introduced. I am not a sponsor on the bill. The sponsor, I believe, will be here shortly to give a probably more impassioned speech. This bill allows for a forensic audit of the 2020 election. I did speak with the sponsor of this bill when he was drafting it. One of the requests that I made that he put in was that it be privately financed because the cost of the Wyndham audit was rather extreme, and to do a similar procedure for the whole state would obviously cost in the millions of dollars. As I've stated before in the committee, I believe that the #1 voter suppression issue in the state right now is the lack of faith people have in our elections, and I understand that there are many people here today to speak in favor of the bill who probably share that sentiment, and I will let them speak to that at greater length than me. With that, thank you, Madam Chairman. Since it is not my bill, I will not be taking questions.
Thank you, Representative Barry. Also signed up to speak on this bill is Sandra Panek. Panek?
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Sandra Panek, and I'm a retired resident of Pelham, New Hampshire. I'm a Gold Star mom, and I've been involved in New Hampshire activist and New Hampshire voter integrity group for the past 12 months. On January 31st, I emailed my local state reps questioning the integrity of the tabulating and voting machines. I received a response from our Secretary of State, David Scanlon, the very next day. This was his response. The AccuVote operating system used in New Hampshire for 20 plus years has a removable memory card that is programmed prior to each election. We have always recognized that if access to the card is not controlled, it could be tampered with. You may be familiar with the documentary Hacking Democracy, which features Harry Hursty conducting a hack of the AccuVote memory card. We have worked with Mr. Hursty at different levels to make sure our electronic voting systems are secure. Please let me know if you have any additional questions. This was a clear admission that the memory cards are hackable. I forwarded this email that Dave Scanlon sent me to the New Hampshire Voter Integrity Group. I figured they would know what to do with this information. Shortly thereafter, Granite Grok published David Scanlon's response to me. Transparency is key. It has since been scrubbed from the internet. I have since emailed 144 towns as a New Hampshire state citizen, requesting an Freedom of Information Act 91A. Process is the right to know. The 3 questions I posed were, how long do you hold on to the voting machine memory cards? What is the process? Where were the memory cards from the 2020 election sent to? 43 towns did not answer my 91A request. 94 towns do not have the cards and already sent them to LHS to be reprogrammed, erased. Only 7 towns still have the memory cards with the voter data still intact. Nashua responded that I had no right to this information. Derry, New Hampshire responded that my request did not fall under FOIA guidelines. Of the 43 towns that did respond to my 91A, the majority wrote back that they kept the memory cards until the recall time frame passes, which is usually 5 to 10 days after an election. Then the memory cards are sent to LHS. The law clearly states those memory cards should not be tampered with for 22 months. LHS is a subsidiary of Dominion. China invested $400 million a month before our national election on October 8th. Need I go on? The market for election vendors is small, and that competition is fierce. The result is a small network of companies have near monopolies on election services. Private vendors have long histories of errors that affected elections, obstructing politicians and the public from seeking information, of corruption, suspect foreign influence, false statements of security, and business dishonesty. I also wrote to LHS and received no response. But these companies are safekeepers of American democracy. If we can't have transparency, what are they hiding and why? Without transparency, trust in our election has evaporated, and we realize we have already lost our country. I'm asking you to help us take back our country and move forward for a forensic audit and safeguard our votes, because with that, I have witnessed we have no confidence, and the machines should be removed as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? I'm not seeing any. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I see that we just had a written statement, just so everybody's aware. You can go on the website, and there is a way to submit a document as to evidence, as to your submission, as to your testimony or evidence, and it becomes a part of the official file. Also signed up to speak is James Wood. Morning.
Yeah, my name's James Wood. I live in Merrimack, New Hampshire. I'll start off as I spent 22 years in the military, serving around the world. Then I followed on with 20 years working for a research development company, which supported the government in all different assets. So I've seen different places around the world. And then I started watching. I had just retired, and I got a little puppy to have retirement with, so I had time on my hands. So I started watching every hearing that was held across the country for everything after the 2020 election. And I started to notice something was pretty much problematic about the whole thing, is everything would go on, and you never saw any of the mainstream media covering any of the hearings. So I'd be like watching and observing, wondering why that information wasn't getting out to the general public. So then I started to notice that there were people filming it, and it was put on to YouTube or various other sources, but it was being deleted immediately after or a day after. Why would you do that if you weren't trying to hide something? For all the things we do in this world, I served around the country, around the world, doing different things for a reason that I thought I was supporting. I went in right after Vietnam. I served with guys who got lied to then, and we're lied to now. All those years I thought I was doing something in honor of the people that went before me, I see now has gone up in smoke. I was on the lawn down in D.C. on the 5th, and I watched what happened. I stood with other veterans. There were 3 million of us down there. 500,000 of us were standing around talking about what's going on. And they say exactly what I'm going to tell you. When the political process breaks down, then you're going to have the military option occur. And we don't want to see that. Because any place in the world where you go where that happens, you'll see the military doesn't ever fix things. We break things. That was our job. So for everybody in this room, know that this election can't be put under the table, swept away. Because we realize there's something wrong across this country. We can't put our finger on it, but we know it's there. Because when things are being taken out from, you can't see it, you can't find it, 2 minutes after it's talked about, there's a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Also, we don't, one of the rules of Reps Hall is that we don't clap or have any outspoken things. Some of you were here before and know that. And part of that is, can you imagine if there were 400 people in here and we were doing that? That would, it'd make, elementary school cafeterias look like a piece of cake. So if you really want to show your pleasure with somebody, if you could just do the jazz hands. I think that's what we allowed to have happen at the last hearing. And I'm seeing some nods. Yeah, I remember correctly. So that's what we'll do today. Signed up to speak is Dave Planka.
Good day, everybody. Thanks for the time you're giving me to talk. I'm actually not technically a New Hampshire resident. I'm actually from Connecticut, and me and my wife are thinking about relocating here, but it really depends on what you're going to do. First of all, I find it really incredible that we're here asking you to do something for us that we're demanding. We want an audit of this 2020 election. Just let me make it clear. Some of the other previous speakers kind of stole some of my thunder. The bottom line is that your grandkids, your children, and any of your family members are going to be living in what you're creating. The bottom line is 2020 is a fraudulent election. There is so much evidence of it, it's overwhelming. You need to do your job and look for it. Stop listening to Jeff Silvestro and all his connections and all those things. All anyone has to do is do a little bit of research, spend an afternoon, and start connecting the dots. We're telling you this is what we want. It's not an option. The Constitution of New Hampshire, as well as the United States of America, dictates that we have the right to tell you what we want. We want an audit. There's so much evidence, it's ridiculous. If you don't do it, just remember, the country that you're going to get is the country that you're helping to create. Your grandkids, every one of your family will have to live in it. The opportunities that you got in this country to be where you are, you're erasing them for everyone else. Why? Are you American? Are you? If you are, you'll do the right thing. Stop making up excuses of why you can't do it, or making up subterfuges, or obfuscate the reality that everybody knows. If you're hiding something, you're hiding something. End of story. Anybody knows this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Planka. If you could, you just said you didn't live here in New Hampshire. Could you correct your pink card? The infamous question in election as to residency versus domicile. Also signed up to speak on this bill is Alvin C.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name's Alvin C., and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. And unfortunately for this bill, I think the train has already left the station because
Mr. C., can you raise the mic a little bit? You're a little hard for us to see. Just tip it up so it's a little more in front of your thank you.
The unfortunate thing is that the machines have already been reprogrammed. City elections had elections last fall. Town elections were last spring. In fact, the next town elections will occur before this bill can get through this legislature. So, unfortunately, about the only thing that can be done here is a hand count of ballots. I don't see any way of doing any other forensic tests. Thank you.
Thank you. Also signed up to speak on this is Regina Barnes.
Thank you to the committee for allowing me to speak. Regina Barnes, and I am from Hampton. I am representing myself today and people that have my same views but cannot be here to speak them. So I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to read something. It's a quote. It's from Hillsdale College Imprimis from last October. 16 years ago, in 2005, the Carter-Baker Commission on Federal Election Reform, now Carter, Jimmy Carter, and Baker was a former Secretary of State, James Baker III. The Carter-Baker Commission on Federal Election Reform issued a report that proposed a uniform system of requiring a photo ID in order to vote in U.S. elections. The report also pointed out that widespread absentee votes make vote fraud more likely. Voter files contain ineligible, duplicate, fictional, and deceased voters, a fact easily exploited using absentee ballots to commit fraud. Citizens who vote absentee are more susceptible to pressure and intimidation, and vote buying schemes are far easier with citizens vote by mail. So for those of you who are unaware, in July of 2020, there was an election commission put together. I don't really know exactly what it was called, but it was to deal with COVID. and how are we going to have the elections with COVID. And it was House Bill 1266, which passed the complete Senate. It was like a 2-to-1 vote in the House. I'm not sure what that means. And it was signed into law by the governor. This is all when the State House was closed. We couldn't come here. House Bill 1266, it was bipartisan, and it was temporary changes made to the state voting laws for the upcoming 2020 elections only, the primary and the general election. And guess what it was talking about? Absentee ballots. And we expanded sending out absentee ballots. Specifically in Hampton, I received it at my house. It came in a brown envelope. I never vote absentee. I always go to the polls. If I'm in Florida, I come home and I vote. And they sent me 2 absentee ballots in the mail now I'm a selectman in Hampton, and I knew we didn't send this out. And there was an envelope in there with a return address, 100 Wanacunnet Road, which is the town clerk's office in Hampton. So obviously I verified with the town manager and the town clerk that we did not send these out. And then later on I find that people in other towns are getting the same thing. So, if someone's elderly and just thinks, and doesn't think about it and sends it in, my question is, if it gets checked off that so-and-so sent their absentee ballot, but they're actually going to vote in person, and this has happened, they go to vote and they've been told that they've already voted. So you're telling me there's no fraud in this election? And as far as the millions of dollars it will count to do a statewide hand count, which is what we will have to do, we will need hundreds of people from every town. People are going to have to get up, go down to the town hall, and we're going to have to complete it as a body, as a community for the whole state. We have the money, and I know you guys may not know specifically, but I have looked at DRA financials, I have looked at state park financials. The money is there. It just needs to be reappropriated. This does not need to be privately funded. This should come from the state government because they are the ones that created the problem. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Thank you very much for coming and for your testimony. These envelopes that you received, did you find out if those were ballots or if those were ballot requests?
They were ballot requests. They were absentee requests.
So you would be, follow-up?
Follow-up.
So you would have to yourself request an absentee ballot using those forms that might have come from a private organization?
Right, but they were at the actual apps. They were the same forms that the town clerk had.
Okay.
So the question is, where do they come from? And it's still fraud.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next person I have signed up to speak is Christopher Bean. Who's calling up his testimony? Welcome, Mr. Bean.
Thank you. Good morning. My printer broke, so I'm going to rely upon my smartphone here. My name is Christopher Bean, and I reside here in Concord. I'm speaking in support of House Bill 1484. I'm a retired professional civil engineer, and I've always taken my responsibility to vote seriously. And until the November 2020 election, I was confident that our New Hampshire elections were accurate. Live free or die, New Hampshire. However, based on the hard work of the New Hampshire Voter Integrity Group and my own research on serious voting irregularities and fraud that has been discovered in other states, with 2/3 of our state using voting machines associated with Dominion, I'm now concerned about New Hampshire. Why are many of our election officials unwilling to provide data on the election, proving it was fair and honest, if they have nothing to hide? My concerns are that some election machine, I call them tapes, have not been preserved and shared with the public. What are they hiding? Potential inflated eligible voting rolls have not been kept current and accurate, and significantly higher than normal percentages of votes were counted compared to eligible votes in certain communities. Again, it's not about the number of votes, it's about the number of legal votes. Based on the support you can see and have heard from others today, we want the forensic audit to prove that our votes counted. Remember that each of you were elected to serve the people. Don't you all want fair elections? If you vote against it, I believe you're covering up a fraudulent election process that cannot be allowed to continue. Please do the right thing and support a full forensic audit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bean. Any questions? I'm not seeing any. Also signed up to speak is Therese Grinnell.
Adam, you may want to catch this one. My name's Therese Grinnell. I'm a registered nurse. I live in Loudon, New Hampshire. I was thrown into the throes of the political process here in New Hampshire back in August when I stood up for medical freedom. Since then, I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of individuals rally around me. Some of them have been involved in the political process here in New Hampshire for years. Every day I wake up and I feel like I'm peeling an onion back another layer, and it gets stinkier and stinkier as I go. This was a message I got yesterday. Good morning. I had to tell you I'm frustrated, disgusted, and have never been more aware and yet distant from the problem we have in New Hampshire. When I learned that the chair here, Barbara Griffin, and the chair of the Election Law Committee handpicked who she wanted on the committee, that is a bit of the problem. Barbara Griffin herself does not believe there is voter fraud in New Hampshire. And then you have the 3 Republicans, I'll leave the word out that this person used, that she is controlling. Joe Sweeney, who happened to call me a left-wing agitator, as the New Hampshire Republican Committee
Ms.
members stood up for me.
I'm going to ask you to speak to the bill.
It's consistent. Hold on.
I
Joe
don't.
Alexander
Ms.
and
Grinnell,
Ross
I
Berry.
am.
What
Thank you.
we have, guys, if we have people here that do not care about voter integrity, we have no hope here in them fixing the problem in New Hampshire. They're about money and they're about politics. And we have a bootlicker list, and several of you are on it. And the state of New Hampshire is going to primary you out. We are done. This is our children. This is our veterans. This is everything this country stands for. And if you don't think we're not on to you, you're wrong. We will do it town by town. We will do what Canada's doing. We will do whatever it takes to stand up. And if you're a rhino, a Republican in name only, and you think you're going to go with the establishment and not for the people, you won't be in politics long. It is a new day. I have your name on this list, and everyone in New Hampshire is going to have exactly what's going on by the time I'm done if I don't have any breath left in me. Having us all show up here, take time off from work, to let us run around like chickens with our heads cut off, you knew those memory cards could be compromised, and you did nothing. Each of you took an oath. Each of you is liable. And when we have COVID tests in the liquor store where we're making $12 in the general fund, the state has the money to bring back our voter integrity and to do a forensic audit. You can either be on the side of freedom or you can be on the side of tyranny. You can jump ship and get on the right side of history right now.
Ms. Grinnell, you have a
And we will
minute left
support
for
you.
testimony on this bill. Thank you.
You continue to go down the wrong path, and you'll have to face your maker along with a lot of righteous constituents in this state who will live free or we will die.
Any questions?
All right.
Also signed up to speak on this is Roseanne Chester.
Thank you, committee chair. Thank you, committee members. I also used to believe in our integrity of our elections here in New Hampshire and in my town. I remember everybody running around in 2015, 2016 saying there was election fraud. It wasn't from the Republican side of things. We have had a problem with our elections for years. It became extremely obvious in 2020. However, we've all agreed when the Republicans are running, they say, and they don't win, they say there's election fraud. When the Democrats run and they don't win, they say there's election fraud. The bottom line is there is election fraud. The machines are part of the election fraud, but there's tons, there's so much. So I was doing an exercise last night with regards to local government, and I found out that more than 50% of our local governments have friends, family members, or representatives in local positions who vote in those voter machines. That's a problem for me, okay? That's a problem for me. The fact that because I recently became involved, I found something about Bedford town official about 2020 ballot fiasco, running for town moderator, running unopposed. And he made the comment that he does not work for the people. He does not work for the voters. This is who our town moderator, running unopposed, is. And part of that is because we don't have access to who else is running until after the close of everyone's thrown their hat in the ring. That's when they put it out there and they say, okay, this is who's running. I actually went to my town clerk on Friday at 2 o'clock, asked him if anyone was running unopposed, and she assured me that was not the case. Bottom line is, election fraud is a mess. If we want to bring back integrity, transparency, and true belief in our election cycle and our state of New Hampshire, we need to stand up now. And to quote DOJ folks, just because it's unethical doesn't mean it's against the law. That's unacceptable. And that was a DOJ with regards to not election integrity, but they are included in that as well. So that's pretty much what I have to say, and I'm open for questions.
Anybody have any questions? I'm seeing none. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Chester. Kelly Potenza?
I could talk about this for hours, so I'm going to piggyback on what Therese Grinnell said. It's rigged from within. So if we want to just talk about 2020, it's a trifecta of a steal. So in addition to having issues with the machines, we already know about that with SB 43. We know about what took place with Wyndham. We also have had a problem in this state for years, and that has to do with people showing up. Buses have been reported coming in from out of state, same-day registrations, don't show an ID, and they get to vote. Every single one of those, so let's just talk about 2016. Maggie Hassan never won. That's a fact. Thousands came back undeliverable from the Secretary of State's office. What was done with those? People that registered same day. They are not domiciled here in New Hampshire. Nothing's done. Now there's bills that are coming up to put those aside and check them. Where have we been? This has been going on for years. Sweeney, you're on this committee. This is what happens, though. You've got someone that is actually now representing Chuck Morse. He has a conflict of interest. We have people that are rigging this from in. Governor Sununu signed 2 laws, 1266 being the most. Our whole general court was not part of that. That was like 24 people after our state house was shut down. That is not representative. To open up absentee ballots to prove the steal here, what we had in 2020. Rye is a perfect example where you knock on someone's door and there were 5 votes from that house and only 2 people voted that actually lived there. And the 3 previous people that owned it that. We need an audit, but I know you guys aren't going to do anything about it. You were in on removing the language there, Barbara. We know what you did in regards with the folds on the ballots. You knew it would be a problem. You removed the language. You removed the language when the rest of the House committee wanted the president's race to be looked at. You removed that language. We know what you did. We have it all on tape. We have it all. You put the people back in the room. LHS is owned by Dominion. You put them back in the room for the SB 43 audit. It was a fake audit that happened, but here we are. This is not going to change anything. This is a wonderful bill. We know it won't happen. So now the people have to take over. That's what she said, and that's exactly what has to happen. We're on to all of you. It's a given here at this point, so I'm really sorry that this is a wonderful bill, and I'm sure that most of you won't vote for it. There has been problems for years, and just so you know, Governor Sununu's father is the one that got the machines here in New Hampshire, so just so you know that. And if you want to go way back, when it was Bush against Dole, let's talk about that. Dole had that election in Manchester. He was leading by 9 points, 9 or 10 points when our polls were really good at that point. The machines got slipped in right then, right? And guess what? He took Manchester. That was never going to happen. Bush was never going to take Manchester. And then what happened? Oh, John Sununu, Papa Sununu, became what? Chief of Staff under Bush. It's been rigged for a long time, folks. Wake up.
Any questions for Ms. Potenza? Seeing none, I'm going to recognize Representative Baxter, the prime sponsor of the bill, and I'm going to ask him and our own Representative Barry to fill out a pink card before they go.
Thank you for having me, members of the committee. HB 1484, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, is my bill for a full forensic audit of New Hampshire's 2020 election results. Thank you. Let me be clear. A majority of this state thinks either the 2016 or the 2020 election was stolen. The cornerstone of our republic is our democracy. And every voter in this entire state, and really the whole country, deserves nothing less than full transparency with our elections. This bill would allow every person to know the truth about 2020 and the 2020 election results in our state. Now, the main argument to this bill was it's going to cost millions of dollars. We can't afford this. It's a waste of money. So we fixed that. This bill is free. Let me repeat that. This bill is free for taxpayers because the bill, the audit, is paid for by private individuals and private nonprofits. There is no legitimate argument to be against this forensic audit. But you know what? After we fixed the cost, I started to hear a different argument. The argument then became, well, we don't want to look forwards, or excuse me, we don't want to look backwards. We only want to look forwards. I'm sorry. If your argument is we don't want a forensic audit because we might not like the outcome that the audit produces, that's unacceptable. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. Every person in this state deserves to know what happened in 2020 and to have no questions at all. All this bill does is provide an avenue for transparency. It is a common sense bill. And so I urge every single member of this committee to support this bill, and I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Questions from committee members? Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for coming here with your testimony today. Did you contact the Secretary of State's office with these concerns soon after the election in that period of time when recounts are arranged for, in the few days after an election, when that, and did you, and a second part of the question is, did you find out anything afterwards that would make you concerned about it that you discussed with them as well?
Well, thank you, Representative, for the question. This bill, first and foremost, isn't about my concern. It's about the concerns of people in this state and really this whole country. And President Donald Trump has called for an audit in all 50 states. And the Secretary of the State himself, who, by the way, is not a Trump guy, which is fine, but that's just where he comes down on things, he has said that Wyndham broke the law. So we've got a Secretary of State that has said towns operating our elections have broke the law. Of course we should have an audit of our election. So it's not about what I think or about what I'm doing or that I'm proposing the bill. It's about the people of this state, and they deserve to know the truth when it comes for 2020. And also I'd say Republicans got elected in part to fight for election integrity, to make sure every legal vote counts. And then people are wondering, what are elected Republicans actually doing to fight for election integrity in this state? This is a common sense, free bill for taxpayers way to fight for election integrity, and I hope you support it, Representative.
Further questions from the committee? Thank you, Representative Baxter.
Thank you.
Also signed up to speak on this bill is Marilyn Todd. M. Todd, I took a guess. Oh, all right, I'll come back to her. Mark Rossetti.
Good morning. I've got a booming voice. When they put this building together,
I still need you on the microphone.
when they put this building together, everybody had to speak like this. I love the electronic. My name is Mark Rossetti. I'm a state citizen of this state, not a resident, a state citizen. The cyber integrity that we're looking at with this situation, it's a dreamland. It's all false. I went to 3 or 4 polling places and spoke with people who put the machines in and was told that some of them were connected to routers or modems. They're not supposed to be connected. So that really bothers me. In the past, we've had the last Attorney General at the Supreme Court, before he became the Supreme Justice, arguing to change the meaning of words, inhabitant, resident, so on and so forth. These games are played behind the backs of those who should be consenting to this. It's disgusting. I understand that there were 134 memory cards erased. That's disgusting, because by RSA 33A3A in the New Hampshire Election Procedure Manual, it states for elections, federal or state elections, ballots, absentee ballot applications, affidavit envelopes, list and challenge voter affidavits should be retained by the city or town clerk, and the period of retention is until the contest is settled and all appeals have expired, or at least 22 months after the election, whichever is longer. For that reason and that reason only, this election should be audited. There's no question about it. It's totally illegal, and heads should roll. Those who allowed those memory cards to be erased, it's disgusting. Our redress of grievance has gone away in this state. It puts me beside myself. Now, to go to an election, I can go to a liquor store, and I'm 63 years old, and they ask me for an ID. But when I went to vote in Atkinson, in the town that I'm from, I wasn't asked for an ID. I understand immigration's flying people in to Pease International Airport. Are these people going to be able to vote? They're not even domiciled here or have proof of domicile or residence or proof that they are inhabitants. Our elections are being stolen every which way but loose. We're going to end up with this being the Comitat, which is Russia. We're not going to end up having a free country anymore. So, and one last thing. We have a third-party company that is responsible for counting our votes and responsible for the election machines, LHS. They are not responsible to any of you or any of us. They're a private company. That's disgusting. We need to go back to paper ballots as soon as this audit is done. I'm not going to say, please do this audit. I'm going to instruct my magistrates to do this audit, especially when I find out that it's not coming out of public funds. It's being paid for privately. Thank you.
Thank you. Also signed up to speak, do you want to, Marilyn Todd.
Sorry. He doesn't have his sisters here this time. All right. All right. It was this committee's responsibility to ensure an accurate audit.
Just to be sure, it's Marilyn Todd.
Oh, sorry.
Because
Yes.
people are listening.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Marilyn Todd, Nashua, New Hampshire.
Thank you.
All right. So it was this committee's responsibility to ensure an accurate audit. Here's the things that went wrong. The cameras went out. 4 extra boxes showed up than what Wyndham had originally known about or sent out. 3 verified voting auditors. One of them passed out, didn't even answer our questions, and that was one of the ones selected. You all knew about Foldgate, and as an auditor, I'm going to speak to you coming from a professional stance. You're going to tell me that a paper fold caused 4 Republicans to gain 300, around exactly 300 votes from the hand count to the machine count, and then the leading Democrat lost 99. Those numbers, that's why I started this. I didn't even know what a House rep was a year ago this month. I didn't know what a House rep was, I didn't know what a senator was, but I knew when I saw that 4 Republicans were shorted 300 votes each, and the leading Democrat gained 99, as an auditor, that's a problem. Those are 2 even numbers, and a paper fold it's just too crazy. It doesn't make sense for a paper fold to do that. I also want to say that, you know, we have on live video that Harry Hursty deleted our memory cards. I have evidence of 3 elections, all with the same exact memory cards. 3 elections have been wiped so far. 3. State of New Hampshire has broken the law 3 different times. We have attorneys coming into New Hampshire. We have documentaries being made. We have evidence of this all. So do the right thing, because no matter what, this is all going to be exposed, and it's going to keep being exposed. And none of us here are going to stop until it's done. And it's 9:30 in the morning, and that's why this whole house isn't full. Because when I tell you we have a lot of support, when I started this group a year ago, it was embarrassing to talk about election fraud. I'm telling you right now, I will scream it from the mountaintops, and so will everybody else in this room. We deserve a free audit. We deserve a free and fair audit. My son deserves to vote if he wants to vote, and know that his vote counts. I told you guys when I first started this last year, don't make us choose our children's future. Don't make us pick our children's future, because they're always going to win. And we deserve this. And you guys have made way too many mistakes. Allowing LHS, like I said to you guys in the last meeting, as an auditor, as a forensic auditor, that is my job title. If I ever gave the IRS my directions on my client on how to audit them from my client, we would all go to jail. We would all go to jail. If I erased my client's POS system, I would go to jail. I am an auditor too, and I know how this works. And like I said last time, the whole audit was based on just because it's unethical doesn't make it a criminal violation. They knew it was unethical. Harry Hursty, you guys spent $3.1 million in 2016, 2017, somewhere around there. Harry Hursty literally was paid over $250,000 of that already. He's already been in our machines for election security. Why are we having people that have already been in our machines audit? I would go to jail for that as well. I would go to jail. If I did your bookkeeping and I did your audit, I would go to jail. So why, with our most sacred right, are we not protecting it more than money? How does that make sense? And I'm not going to stop, and none of us are going to stop, and we're going to keep waking people up. And that's what we're gonna do, because I'm telling you right now, we have a full team coming to New Hampshire, guys. We have a full team, and I promise you that. It's just gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you guys can either join us and show that this isn't because of you, or you can, or you guys will be voted out. I mean, we've already proved that we can do this. We've already proved that if someone doesn't do what they're supposed to do, we will vote them out, and we will spend every waking moment doing that. Because for my children, I will climb mountains. I will move them. I will do whatever I need to do to make sure my children are free.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Todd? Also signed up to speak, Sheila Tripodi. Thank you.
Good morning. Excuse me, my name is Sheila Tripodi, and I come from Bridgewater, New Hampshire. This is a first for me. I do not believe this is about voter integrity. This is not about Democrat. This is not about Republican. This is not about anything but personal integrity. We have got to be people who are truthful. You have been put in the positions that you are put in for a reason, and that is to represent a body of people that trust. You can leave today, and we're probably history. You can't walk away from your personal integrity, and I am asking you and urging you to exercise the trust that we have put in you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Also signed up to speak is Steve Lateras. I don't know if I pronounced that right.
Good morning.
Loose child, come back. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. My name is Steve Lateras. I'm a citizen of the state of New Hampshire in America. I have served the military in 3 different branches. I'm a retired federal agent. I have been in wartime. I've been in peacetime. I've served approximately 30 years. I've been all over the world. I know what democracy is. I fought for it. My friends and colleagues were killed. I'm concerned where we are going. America is on the precipice of collapse. We the people, as you heard Representative Baxter, this is a free audit. If this is free, there's really no, fiduciary burden on the state. So I'm asking each and every representative for the continuance of our free and fair elections that you do a house audit, a forensic audit. This last election, there's no question, there was a plethora, and I don't want to get into that side issue, but there's a plethora of evidence that this was a stolen election. There's no question. The videos are out there. We're all well read. I've served the front lines. I'm a former presidential security as well. I know what is happening to this nation. Just because a certain individual ran for politics, but we know there's a history going back. Dominion, anything, let me tell you something, anything is hackable. I have a top secret clearance. I did some of the most highest secrets for this government. Dominion can be hacked. Anything can be hacked. There are some very brilliant actors and communists and spies out there that countries, including our own, unfortunately, because we have been infiltrated by Trojan horses. We need fair and honest elections. The Constitution wants it, the Bill of Rights want it, all us Americans want it, we demand it. I will die fighting for this nation as a civilian right now. I will give my last breath and my last ounce of blood. I will not allow this nation to be stolen, and I demand accountability, and I demand forensic audit. You gotta remember, you all work for us, and you all know that. I'm not here to counsel you. I'm not here to, mock or ridicule, but it is overwhelming nationwide. Americans want accountability, and we demand justice, and we demand a forensic audit. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Secretary Scanlon, did you want to speak to this bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm David Scanlon, I have to get used to saying Secretary of State. The great thing about New Hampshire elections are that they're decentralized and that we rely on thousands of locally elected officials to conduct our elections. It's a very, very human process. And there are individual failures that take place, and you know, we see that in Windham and we see that in Bedford. Those have been very public examples. The system is not perfect. There are mistakes that are made, and when they are, people are held accountable. But that failure at an individual level does not translate into some type of a major conspiracy or collusion to do something different with the actual election results. I have complete confidence in the way New Hampshire runs its elections. I believe that the results are accurate. They reflect who should be placed in office.
Sir, all right. Jazz hands are okay. I'm putting up with what I consider to be very disrespectful hands down. Jazz hand, and one of the reasons we have the rule in Reps Hall about how we conduct ourselves is because each one of you is entitled to speak and to have us listen, regardless of what we say and whether or not we agree with it. So I am giving Secretary Scanlon the courtesy of speaking to this. Please keep your response silent so we can continue with the hearing this morning and also get on to our other bills. And thank you very much. Continue, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The point is that because we're decentralized and we have all of those volunteers, average people in the state of New Hampshire, all citizens, all dedicated, and I believe they all have integrity, would know if there was something going on with our elections in the form of some type of conspiracy. They would be here at a meeting like this if that's what they believed, but they're not. And I think if you reach out and talk to those local election officials, they also would express the confidence that they have in that process. Now, are there ways that we can be more transparent? Certainly, and I think we have major training issues that we have to deal with local election officials. We have to do a better job communicating with the general public and the voters so that they understand what that process is and all of the checks and balances that are in place to make sure that our elections are accurate and fair. In terms of this particular bill, calling for a statewide audit at a time when we are gearing up for the 2022 election cycle would be incredibly difficult to do. We'd have the managing the ballots from the last election, being to participate in an audit while we're trying to get everything ready for the 2022 election. Frankly, I haven't heard anything here today in the form of evidence that shows that there was something wrong on a larger scale that we really need to look into. So, again, I can only express my faith in our election process, I'll end there, Madam Chair, and be happy to answer any questions.
Secretary Scanlon, the last speaker I have signed up is Brian Richardson. Before Mr. Richardson gets to the mic, as you all know, you can sign up online to indicate your position on a bill. That closes in the morning of the hearing. And in regards to 1484, we had 187 people signed up in support and 292 signed up opposed. Welcome, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Brian Richardson, Alexandria. I'm going to be short and sweet here, but we pride ourselves in the fact that we are the first in the nation primary. Well, if we want to maintain that, how can we continue with this as so many people know that this last election and others may very well have been fraudulent. If we don't have free and fair elections, folks, what do we have? If we cannot all agree that we and believe that we have free and fair elections, what do we have? Where do we go from here? Folks, we have to be transparent. If we can't be transparent, then what avenue do the populace have after that? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And with that testimony, thank you everybody for coming on this particular bill. I'm going to close the public hearing on 1484, and our next bill is 1473, which is also in regards to a forensic audit. This is of the November 2020 election results in Merrimack County for President, Governor, and United States Senate. And with us here to introduce the legislation is the prime sponsor, Representative Abrami. Introduce the bill, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee. For the record, State Rep. Pat Abrami, Rockingham 19, the town of Stratham. Madam Chair, the citizens of New Hampshire would welcome and be well served if a more complete forensic audit of our election process was conducted. We recommend utilizing ballots from the last general election because those are the only ballots that we can look at. The cards are wiped out after 22 months, so if we don't, from prior elections, those ballots don't exist. Those cards don't exist from the machines. It is clear that this audit can raise what is currently very low voter confidence. You will hear in testimony from others why this bill is very focused, with a detailed methodology laid out in the language of the bill. It is up to us as legislators to hear the voices of the people. We in New Hampshire have never had this type of thorough audit of our election process done. It is probably a long time overdue. The purpose of House Bill 1473 is to use a single county, and we chose Merrimack. Not that there's anything special about Merrimack, but it's a medium-sized county, pretty much. That's why we picked Merrimack to be audited. The audit would be limited to presidential, gubernatorial, and U.S. Senate races to be utilized as the test races. The audit will be conducted with an impartial, never-before-used third party who can provide an evaluation of the New Hampshire process and tools. Should there be a large enough gap in the audit results in Merrimack, the balance of the state would be audited. What makes the audit approach prescribed in this bill unique is that it will not include stakeholders. Just like audits conducted by CPA firms for publicly traded companies that do. This not only is best practice, but it removes any potential concerns that the audit was biased in any way. The audit will be visible to the public with the aid of volunteers from both parties. The audit team will document and identify process gaps, detail areas of vulnerability, and report on inconsistency in election results. They will make recommendations on their findings to be acted upon by this legislature. Again, the intent of the effort is to improve election processes as needed. We're not doing any foregone conclusions. If we're doing an audit just to see, like any other company would do, like a company would do, to see if there's any improvements that could help us out. This bill in no way attempts to change the 2020 election results. This is a forward-looking bill designed to boost voter confidence. You have already heard much testimony from the public on the prior bill on why an audit is needed. You will hear continued testimony on why, I'm sure. However, you will also hear testimony on independent citizen audit efforts that have been conducted. I will once again leave it to Brenda Town, for whom I filed this bill for, to walk you through the specifics of the bill. However, my contribution to the bill was my suggestion to set up an election audit fund, which is Section 10 of the bill, which is on page 3, lines 14 to 23. Those who supported the audit idea suggested that gifts, grants, and donations can be raised to help pay for the audit. Being a member of the Ways and Means Committee, I was aware that there is a way to properly have the state accept private money. The language of this section is what is generally utilized. The key language, and I'll quote, it says, "There is established in the state treasury an election audit fund, which shall be administered by the Secretary of State." If this was an agricultural fund, it would say which should be administered by the Commissioner of Agriculture. So the reason the Secretary of State's involved, because this is election bill, election fund. The bill does ask for an appropriation, though, of $150,000 to seed the fund, which I am sure the Finance Committee will weigh in on if this bill passes. Madam Chair, I know your committee will give full consideration to this bill. Once again, I must return to my Ways and Means Committee, where we're doing work sessions and executing bills. So so please, if you can allow Ms. Town and others to answer your questions that you may have on this bill. However, I will take any questions that relate to the fund that we're talking about, because that's an area I'm very familiar with.
Does anybody have any questions? Representative Terosian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, the member, for taking my question. So in that section you just referenced, you show a sum of $150,000. Do you think this audit can be done for that, or is that just a down payment on it?
That will pay for a part of it. I think that's why we're creating the fund for other donations.
So do you have an estimate of what you think it would cost to do this audit?
I don't. Perhaps Ms. Town does.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Abrami. Also
Thank you.
signed up to speak on this is Representative Susan Homola from Hollis. Welcome.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you for listening to testimony, and thank you to the members for hearing.
Closer to the mic, because it's got to get picked up by the live stream. Thank
How's
you.
that? Better? Thank you for the members for listening today to testimony. I'm Representative Sue Homola. I represent Hollis. The purpose of this testimony is to provide support for HB 1473, authorizing a forensic audit of the November 3rd, 2020 election results for Merrimack County. Following the election, a constituent with a background in data analysis contacted me regarding preliminary vote analysis he did for select towns across New Hampshire. He detected anomalies in the data and brought those to the attention of Mr. Bud Fitch, legal counsel for the Secretary of State's office. Mr. Fitch informed him that the analysis method he performed was not rigorous enough to rate further action on the matter. The constituent then redid the analysis with a more thorough method utilizing publicly available vote totals from 2020, and he compared those with the 2016 general election results. He performed an analysis of every town across New Hampshire. Interestingly, this data revealed an issue with the Wyndham state rep race before that information was even publicly available or publicly discussed. This data highlighted statistical anomalies in multiple towns, which showed shifts in the federal ticket results when compared with the historically expected results of the state house race results. For example, statistical anomalies occurred in some select towns in Hillsborough County, such as Litchfield, Lindenborough, Nashua, and Hudson, and in Rockingham County, it occurred in such places as Northampton, which showed an even bigger deviation from the historically typical vote share. In Merrimack County, statistical anomalies presented themselves in some locations such as Concord Ward 8 and Newberry. Please note, this is not a complete listing, it's just some examples where anomalies were noted. In addition to this data, another analysis was done which compared vote totals of towns that did and did not use the Diebold/Dominion machine counting devices. In towns and districts that did not use Diebold machines, the Republican presidential candidate's overall vote share was 2.8% less than the local New Hampshire State House Republican candidates. In locations that did use Diebold machines, the Republican presidential candidate's overall vote share was 6.4% less than local New Hampshire State House Republican candidates. This results in an overall difference of 3.6%, and that means that in places where Diebold machines were used, there is a more than double percentage of undervoting. Please note, this vote count data analysis in each town in no way suggests malfeasance. However, given the historically expected vote deviation, it did suggest that a closer examination was warranted. On December 3rd, I sent a letter to Chairman Cook of the Ballot Law Commission regarding the vote analysis. I sent this letter to the Ballot Law Commission because this is where I was advised to send the letter after I spoke to Mr. Finch at length about the matter. A copy of the letter was also sent to the offices of the Secretary of State and the Governor. A copy of this letter has also been emailed to you all individually. After receiving no response from the Ballot Law Commission, the Secretary of State, or the Governor's office, I sent a follow-up email on December 23rd. I received a reply from the Ballot Law Chairman, Mr. Cook, the following day, December 24th, with his assurances that he would speak to the Secretary of State's office. On January 14th, 2021, I received his reply, which stated that the Ballot Law Commission did not have the jurisdiction to review the matter further. A copy of the emails between myself and the Ballot Law Commission have also been emailed to you individually. Throughout my request for an audit of some New Hampshire towns, I have regularly emphasized that I make no assertion of election malfeasance. It is quite possible that in one of the most hotly contested elections in recent memory, the voters of New Hampshire did choose to be the only state in the country to completely flip its state legislative majority while simultaneously vote for the opposing political party candidates in all federal races. With the I truly am not being sarcastic. With the craziness of 2020, we know that anything's possible. Having said that, it is clear that over this past year, voter confidence has been strained. And given the amount of energy and pride we infuse into our state election process, this lack of confidence represents something quite disheartening, especially if we leave it unchecked. I've heard some election officials say that it's time to move forward and not backward as we close the chapter on the November 3rd, 2020 election. It does not take much effort to discover that the uneasiness many New Hampshire voters have felt about this past election is still relevant and important issue. And voter confidence has been further shaken by our collective apathy over this past year. Until we properly examine a sampling of the anomalous vote data we know exists, lack of public confidence in vote integrity will continue to cast doubt over all future elections, which would really be heartbreaking. I support HB 1473 because it casts a wide enough net by which to properly audit the November 3rd, 2020 election results, and it will enable us to restore public confidence in our election process going forward. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions for the representative? Thank you. Seeing none, thank you for coming and staying this morning. Brenda Town has also signed up to speak to this bill.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much, committee, and thank you, Chair, for hearing me today. My name is Brenda Town. I'm becoming a regular here and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I live in Stratham. I'm a daughter of a U.S. Marine, a mother of 4, including 3 military. Yeah. Is that better? Okay. A mother of 4, including 3 military sons, a grandmother of 8, and I'm a businesswoman. And I'm part of this large team here that's been working together to do a citizens audit based on our concerns over the 2020 election. We have 8,000 people participating in various forms across multiple platforms, and we've executed over 243 FOIA requests in order to do the work that we're doing. In 2020, we experienced some really unusual things in New Hampshire, and so what I want to do is talk about 2 things, because HB 1473 has really 2 asks of this committee. The first ask is in regards to conducting a forensic audit of a test case, which is Merrimack. We're asking you to evaluate some of the evidence you're hearing today on the necessity of that audit. The second thing we're asking you is to do the audit in a very prescribed way. There was a lot of fallout from our Wyndham audit, and a lot of learnings, and so we carried them forward into this bill. So I'm going to touch on those two parts. So the first thing, what happened in 2020 that made us all think we needed to kind of look into this? Beyond the fact that we have not ever, as a state, conducted an audit of our election practices, which is, as Pat mentioned, is really unusual. Any large business that has outside stakeholders uses third-party audit so that they can commit to those stakeholders that the results are accurate. And we do not have that practice, and so this is our opportunity to do it. In 2020, we had 255% increase in our absentee ballots. That is a third of all the ballots cast in 2020 were absentee. This was an anomaly for us. Again, COVID happened, but never in our history did we have over 9% absentee ballots. Across the state, we had some really unusual things happen too. So I'm going to isolate two counties. In Rockingham, the county ballots grew 1% in 2012 from the prior election, 1% in 2016 from the prior election, but miraculously, they grew 13% in 2020. In one of the two parties grew by 25%. Now what makes that unusual is that the population in Rockingham grew 2%. So how in the world would that happen? Makes you scratch your head. It's on that list of the things that make you go, right? Let's talk about Hillsborough. Very similarly, they had flat ballots in 2012, a decline in 2016, but they grew 12% overall in 2020, and 23% voter growth in a single party in that election, while the population grew 1.7%. Something doesn't make sense, and that is why we really need to focus on the data and the details, and that's why we're asking your help here. So let's just talk a little bit about the foundations of our election process. You've heard people talk about our machines. As a state, we have given the responsibility of managing our election process through the machines to a single company named LHS. LHS is the single focus of the machine memory card programming, as well as any updates and maintenance. Through our FOIA requests, we have found that most town clerks have had LHS come in, perform maintenance on their machines. No one signed the forms, no one said what they've done, and they've sent their cards back post the election immediately to LHS for reprogramming in anticipation of the next election. As you've heard, this is in violation of federal law by not maintaining the data for 22 months. Major problem. The second thing about the machines is that they are hackable. Again, mentioned by other people giving testimony, as well as in a letter from our own Secretary of State, the machines are vulnerable. What makes it even more disconcerting is that we have it documented and splashed across the country in documentaries where our LHS machines are the focal point. You can see them hacking it on the big rig and hacking democracy. So it's a big problem for us. Where the rubber hits the road, and up to this point in time, most everything I can tell you is anecdotal. It really becomes data-driven when I tell you about our canvas. This fearless group of people went out and canvassed multiple towns. We knocked on almost 1,000 doors. We reached about half of the people, and what we found is about 13 to 15% of the votes cast were not cast by the voters at those homes. We have, and again, we can mention these cases, you've heard them, people that live in the residence, didn't vote, had absentee ballots cast on their behalf. We have addresses that do not exist. We have people who've gone in and voted in person who had absentee ballots cast for them. These have generated affidavits, and these affidavits sit in front of the Attorney General. They were sent to him hard copy. He has them as of Monday, electronic copy. They were served as of Saturday. We continue to canvass and bring forward information, but this is hard data that is relevant to where we are today and the need for this information. So let me talk a little bit about Wyndham and why we have actually put the procedure of how we'd like this audit conducted. You know, what we saw, we had Wyndham in the spotlight. You guys saw the boxes being rolled out, boxes being open, you could reach in. We also had a very public issue where we hired a third-party auditor who has been well known to us. His name is Harry Hursty. Harry Hursty was the focal point for instructing on the machine audit. We have him on video instructing the reset of the cards to pre-election, and we also have him instructing making no copy of the existing memory cards. This reset our memory cards to pre-election. I also have, which I will provide to you, an affidavit signed by Harry Hursty when he was in a court appearance in Wisconsin. In his affidavit, he states that the memory cards can be hacked and that once they are reset, the hack is removed. So we have his signed affidavit and we have him on tape performing that exact maneuver within our Wyndham audit. This is incredibly disconcerting to the people in the room and the people that are concerned about election integrity. So we've been very prescriptive. We have asked, let's do a sample to find out what's going on in New Hampshire. We've asked to go into Merrimack and do a 3-race audit using a third party with participation both from the towns as well as a member of the House, a member of the Senate, and a third-party consultant to help them with technical questions. To us, nothing short of a detailed forensic audit with an impartial third party will satisfy our concern over the condition of the election process here in New Hampshire. And we are asking you to step forward and help us conduct this. My father was a Marine, my sons serve, and they are willing to shed their blood for this country. And I believe that our ballots are what they fight for. If we would audit banks, we should be auditing these ballots. And I thank you for your consideration, and I'll be glad to take your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Town. Committee have any questions? Representative Lane.
Thank you. We asked, and I don't recall the answer, what towns did you conduct these audits in?
The canvas?
The canvas, yes.
We canvassed Waterville and Rye as our first 2 towns, and we have actually canvases going on in other towns as well.
Okay, thank you.
Questions from the committee? Thank you, Ms. Town.
Thank you.
Marilyn Todd?
Hi, Marilyn Todd, Nashua, New Hampshire. So I just want to say, when Scanlon got up to speak, so in our audit, there was federal, as Brenda just went over, there was federal laws that were broken and there were state laws that were broken. We will be filing lawsuits for both and a class action. So we're filing 3 lawsuits against the state of New Hampshire, but we're hoping we don't have to, because I need to go back to work. I have 3 kids. I have spent the last year auditing the state, and I don't know what it's going to take for us to show you that we're not going to give up. And, you know, the last time I talked about what was wrong with Wyndham. So, but you guys have an opportunity to make that right. You guys have an opportunity to do what's right for this country and to do what's right for us. Because I'm not going back to work. I made that promise at the audit to Chief Investigator Dick Tracy, and I told him I will not be going back to work until New Hampshire gets a free audit, and I promise you I won't. And my boss really needs me right now. It's tax season. So I need to go back to work, but I'm not going to until we get an audit. And I'm not going to stop waking people up, and I have documentaries being made. I have documentaries being made, and a lot of them involve you guys. And if you guys want to keep sitting on the spotlight, we have teams that are coming to New Hampshire. We have documentaries being made, we have lawsuits being filed, and we have the Chief Deputy, Bud Fitch, said that we have this in writing. We have a whistleblower town clerk. We have a whistleblower town clerk. Just so you guys know, I don't know if you guys saw the interview or not, but there is, and Bud Fitch literally writes in an email that you don't have to keep the memory cards. It doesn't get much more clear than that. That is a federal violation. It's a federal violation, it's a state violation. Why would you not keep those memory cards when you know that they can be hacked? I also have an email from Scanlan admitting that the memory cards can be hacked. So why would you not keep a memory card that can be hacked? Does that make any sense? If you guys put your money, if this was your money, would you audit it? And I know damn well you guys would audit this if this was your money. So I'm asking you to do all of us a favor here, because we breathe and live these elections. And like I said, a lot of us are working. There's people that work 10 hours a day and then come home and do a bunch of data entry for New Hampshire voter integrity. These people are done with it. And the only reason why they're not here today is because it's a work day. So I'm asking you, let us get our lives back, because we're just going to keep waking more and more and more people up, and it's not going to stop. And do the right thing. You guys all have kids. Don't you want them to vote? Don't you want to ensure their future? And Scanlan needs to be the first person to go, because I have a bunch of evidence on
I don't
Scanlan.
mind if you point at me. I don't want you pointing it at other people.
Sorry. He's not here anymore.
Oh, okay, I didn't even notice.
I just
I'm
knew he was
focused
sitting
on
in that
you. I'm
direction.
All
but
right,
he's
you
not-
can point. Go back.
Yeah,
You can do it.
he's not here anymore. He left after I confronted him about his lie, just so you know. I did confront him about his lie, and he left. So, you have Dean? So the moral of the story is, please, there's only two options. Get rid of the machines or give us a real audit. There's two bills. Those are the only two options, and that's only fair. And you guys have to agree with that. This is our most sacred right. I've fought for this country. My husband's fought for this country. My grandfathers came on the Mayflower, and my grandfather served in the American Revolution. That must mean something. We're all fighters in this room, and we're not going to give up. Give us back our state, and give us back our sanity. So either get rid of the machines, or get rid of, or give us an audit. If you don't do one of the two, that means you're in on it.
Any questions for Ms. Todd? Seeing none. Also signed up to speak is Elaine Plant.
Good morning. My name is Elaine Plant, and I'm a Dover resident. I am also...
Can you get a little closer to the mic?
Yes, Elaine Plant from Dover, and also first time being in a meeting like today, and also admittedly having been a lazy citizen most of my life, but that has changed because of what I've had a chance to witness for myself, and that recently with voter registration and the absentee ballots. I believe there are questions that need answers in both of those areas. A close friend of mine acquired the voter registration list from her town. On that list were 3 people registered at her own home address, not her family, who had not lived there in well excess of 10 years. And there were many examples like that she found. This prompted me to get my town's voter registration list. And when I went to my clerk's office, I was denied access, as were several friends trying to access the voter list from their towns as well. That is a problem, as this is public information. So we ended up calling the state and were given access to those lists. And it begs the question of why were we denied access in the first place, and where is the transparency, and why were we being denied? A friend and I vetted the official checklist of the state general election of 11/3/2020, including the same-day registration with the voter registration lists for the town. We observed double votes, people voting with no address and no ID, people on the voter list but listed again on the write-in page, write-in pages with 25 to 50 names on them per ward and per letter, signatures missing by the monitors witnessing the pages. That voter roll had not been updated in 10 years. The volunteers at these election sites can't be the ones responsible for making sure everything is accurate. From what I saw, I do not have great confidence in the election process. I had the opportunity to canvass in the Rye area in New Hampshire in October of 2021 with 9 other people for a few hours. While knocking on doors, I discovered from the current resident that 2 others registered at that address no longer lived there. At another address, a person registered on the list had Maiden license plates. In early October of 2021, I went to the clerk to obtain absentee ballots for myself and my husband. I could not leave with my husband's ballot as he was not with me, so the clerk had to mail it. I asked about timelines to be sure that we would receive it before traveling. The clerk stuffed, sealed, and put the ballot in outgoing mail while I watched her to allay any fear of not getting it timely. 2 weeks later, still no ballot. My husband had to go into the clerk. He had to sign off on a paper that he had not received it and get another ballot to vote. So the disappearing ballot out there was for anybody else to vote with. My daughter, not living with us, traveling for a living, requested her absentee ballot and never received hers. As a result, she was denied the opportunity to vote in the 2020 election. Where did her missing ballot go? I support the HB 1473 because in my little world, I have seen this much irregularity, and I need effort through investigation to restore my confidence in the election process. This was not written, but because I've learned a lot here this morning just from the others, and I was a little bit shocked at what came out of Mr. Secretary of State Scanlon's mouth, saying that he feels secure that if there were issues happening, we'd know it. We have the opportunity to not go upon feelings. We have the opportunity to do an investigation and make all those voices who feel that it is not secure, secure. And then I learned another thing this morning. Me being nervous as a first-time voice, and I heard other first-time voices, I think we're going to have a windfall of first-time voices now speaking up because everybody has questions and they're having their own experiences and they're hearing all these other people. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Seeing none, also signed up to speak is Michael Yovanovich from Hooksett, who is a representative.
Thank you. I'm actually introducing the next bill. Yes. All right. I'll be back.
Roseanne Chester.
Thank you, committee chair. Thank you, committee members. With any problem, we need to help find a solution, because the bottom line is you've heard lots and lots of testimony, and even Secretary of State Scanlon said, oh yeah, Wyndham was a problem, Bedford was a problem, but those are outliers. Well, that's the same thing that Harry Hershey said when he did the winding. We had a perfect storm. When do coincidence become unlikely? When does that happen? After the 5th coincidence? After the 23rd coincidence? After the 153 coincidence? The bottom line here, folks, is that we don't believe that our elections have integrity. We have some problems, and I can honestly say I think COVID-19 helped expose that, because we had a lot of time on our hands and we were watching closely. Number one. Number two, the absentee ballot issue was huge in 2020. As a matter of fact, in Bedford, the absentee ballots went up almost 50% in the 2020 election. Now, I can tell you, I know for a fact, some of that is Bedford, New Hampshire has a lot of assisted living and nursing home type of placements. Our law, our election law, allows all those residents to ask through the division, through the executive director. They can request an absentee ballot via the executive director. They get the absentee ballot, they fill out their absentee ballot, and the executive director, now this is the only time that this is not controlled by our town clerk or any other kind of elective official. the executive director is allowed to bring those ballots, and they actually sign saying, I know for a fact all these are legitimate. Now, we've heard Secretary of State Scanlon say, I trust that our elections we have some problems. Well, if we have some problems, how are we going to fix them unless we know exactly what they are? That's what a forensic audit will do for us. It'll provide the learning opportunity to say, this is what we've done wrong, and this is what we need to change. I feel very comfortable that the machines are a problem. They've always been a problem. You can hack into anything. If you can hack into the Department of Defense, you can hack into LHS voting machines. Just saying. Bottom line is that the machines are a problem, but there are hundreds of other problems and outliers. When do 100 problems become something more than a coincidence? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chester. Also signed up to speak on this bill is Kelly Potenza.
So I'm actually going to speak to, I wasn't going to speak on this, but I am because of what recent Secretary of State David Scanlon said. So if everything is, we do a good job in New Hampshire, then why would former Secretary of State Bill Gardner, who's been the Secretary of State for decades, send an 11-page letter, which is damning, basically to the Windham town officials, saying, and I'm just going to quote one paragraph in here, Windham's election night results were not just imprecise, they were fundamentally flawed. For an exhaustive review, please see the report of the forensic audit team. But simply put, town election officials cut corners. Some of those shortcuts created errors, such as using an uncalibrated folding machine, which were unintentional and perhaps unforeseeable, but ultimately resulted in ballots not being accurately counted. Other errors, such as the use of only 6 test ballots instead of the recommended 50, ignored legal obligations and are of continuing concern as they are indicative of an election that was not executed to the standard of the law or expectations of voters. This is an 11-page letter. You should all have a copy of that. Do you? You do? Wonderful. That alone demands an audit. I don't, if it's not going to be the whole state, then Merrimack County, right there, pick a town. That's all we need as a town. Rockingham County had really lots of problems. So if you want to talk about Rye, Waterville Valley, who owns Waterville Valley? Isn't there a ski area there? Yeah, we all know who that's connected with. As well as, look at Derry. How about Milford? Milford folds, just so you know, Milford overvotes. I believe that a state rep that was a Republican actually missed his calling here because of that. Look at the overvotes of Milford. It's unbelievable. There's too many. And actually a Democrat got that seat. But when we tried to look at auditing, just on an outside version, Milford's town tapes were packaged in the ballots that were sent to the Secretary of State, and we didn't have access to those tapes, which is against the law. We can go on and on and on. So for him to stand up there and say, oh, well, we had some problems, Bedford, Windham. What about Merrimack, New Hampshire? Want to talk about those problems? At about 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., over 1,000 ballots came in that weren't there, that were supposedly just found. That's been reported. All of these things, too, when he says that, have been reported to the AG. I reported a ton of stuff from Rye. My husband was a poll watcher. I was a poll watcher. I reported it to the New Hampshire GOP. Fraud. I reported all of this kind of stuff. I had people that were from California with a license voting, and I'm challenging it, but you have to stay 12 feet away. Everybody's all concerned about a mask. They don't really care about anything. So all of these things were reported and have been reported for years. the busloads of people coming in. So for us to act like nothing's just been done, that's the problem. Nothing's been done. Nothing's been investigated. So this is the AG, and this goes back. This isn't just Gordon MacDonald, which is now the Chief Justice of the New Hampshire Supreme Court, that was put in there by Governor Sununu. So we're talking about being rigged from within. These aren't made up things. All of the reports to the AG, all of the reports to the Secretary of State have fallen on deaf ears. Look at Project Veritas. They had to uncover some of the stuff. And it's like a deer in headlights with Bill Gardner. So, you know, God bless all the time, but he gave us this gift. This 11-page document that you all received was his parting gift to us for not doing stuff for a very long time, but that parting gift is the reason why that you need to audit with an independent party. I don't care what it is. Pick 5 towns.
Thank you, Ms. Potenza. Melody Fitz.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Melody Fitz. I reside in Laconia, New Hampshire, which is one of the 11 towns of Belknap County. I am a registered nurse of 41 years, 5 of those which I did quality and utilization review. So I know what integrity looks like. I come from a strong family background that takes voting and legislative process seriously. In fact, my great-grandfather served in the Vermont House of Representatives. My journey that leads me to join New Hampshire Voter Integrity Group and stand before you today started with my son telling me about his experience of being a poll watcher in the November 3rd, 2020 election in Bedford, New Hampshire. He explained to me that he overheard voters state that their votes were not being counted when they put them in the voting machine. And upon hearing that, he told an official that as far as he knew, nothing was ever done about it. In the New Hampshire Voter Integrity Group, I became the person who collected the right-to-know data in the November 3rd, 2020 election from all the towns in Belknap County, which includes Alton, Barnstead, Belmont, Center Harbor, Guilford, Gilmington, Laconia, Meredith, New Hampton, Samberton, and Tilton. And attached to my testimony is what we requested. What I found was data not available for viewing in 5 days if they did not send it by email to me, and that is against the law. I also found that several towns did not know what certain forms that were being asked for. And these are the elected officials, town clerks, working. I also found in Laconia the voting tabulator tape of one of the wards was barely legible due to the ink or fading. One town to this day, after many emails and phone calls to the town clerk and the financial director, have not submitted the town's financial data having to do with election costs from the year 2016 to 2021. Another town did not have their official moderator worksheets reconciling voters and votes and ballots cast. They also did not have the moderator certificate. When asked where they were, they said that they had sent them to the state. In summary, there is a total lack of transparency in the voting system in this state. This state needs a full forensic audit that looks at the entire process of voting. New Hampshire voters need to have integrity in the voting process again. I support House Bill 1473 and ask that you pass this bill. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Pitts. I don't see any questions from the committee. Karen Thorman.
I'm Karen Thoman, and I'm from Nashua. And a lot of what I was going to bring up today is already been said, and my concern is with the quality of our elections that happen. In the city of Nashua, we have a huge problem with the same-day registrations. I say it's a problem because thousands of people register same day. We paid the city clerk for the new voter checklist, which I have one here from Ward 2, that contains all the names and addresses of the same-day registrants, and typed them into Excel sheets so we could compare them easily. People that were registered in the wrong ward showed up in every single ward. So that meant the people doing the registrations weren't checking the street lists and allowing just anybody to walk in and register. People were registering from hotels. A person registered from a dentist office on Daniel Webster Highway in a street that should be so familiar to every single person in Nashua because it's Taggart Street. And that is where our big ice factory is. You know, we get ice up down there. Everybody knows Taggart Street. And they let this guy vote from a dentist office. So then I went to City Hall because I wanted to verify a lot of the absentee votes that were happening. And I had questions to the city clerk, which the response I got was, I'm not answering questions, don't ask me questions. If you want to come and view the voter checklist for that day, you can come in and view it. So I actually took pictures of every single page, and I have thousands of pictures stored from all 9 wards. Just Ward 2 alone, there were pages and pages of, that might be an exaggeration. Let's say there was 5 pages. And during the pre-processing of absentee ballots, they got together in the school gym and they highlighted everybody that had returned an absentee ballot. So on election day, all those people were highlighted knowing that, oh, there's an absentee ballot somewhere, don't come in and vote. So they could tell them that, you know, we already got it, go home. There were at least 5 pages on the checklist in Ward 2 that the process is you check the little checkbox, you cross out the name, and then you write AV for absentee vote in red next to that entry. So there was all kinds of AVs written, but never checked and never crossed out. Is that a vote? I can't even go to my city clerk and say, are these votes, because I'm not allowed to ask questions. How do I verify this? There are so many things wrong that are happening. It's one by one, they're little, but add them up and it's a mountain. The other thing I want to say about the voting machines is in Nashua, we get together, everybody calls in, we tell each other what the count is. We went to taking pictures of the tapes many years ago because it was much easier to text a picture than to call and say numbers. So we have years and years of pictures of tapes. And the thing I noticed this year was the download version of the software on some of the machines is different. And that's a problem, I think. Something's wrong.
Okay.
So, that's all I got to say. I echo everyone else here. There's lots of things going on in these towns.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you for coming and testifying. David Kastenbader? All right, you're going to, tip that up so we can hear you, or fix it. Though I think we're going to ask you to put it down when you're down, too, because nobody else will use it that high.
Yeah, it's actually David Kostenbader, but that's okay. I've lived in New Hampshire for nearly 30 years. I've worked in club management and in sales, and I love this state. The reason I volunteered to help canvass is because I care about our country, our state, and most of all, my grandchildren. My father was a World War II fighter pilot in the Pacific, and a lot of American blood was shed to protect our freedom, and most importantly, our sacred vote. Upon learning that Rye had something like 120% of eligible voters registered, 120% of eligible voters registered, I had to see if this was true, so I spent some time knocking on doors asking a few questions. Did you vote in the 2020 presidential election? I did not want to know who they voted for, but I wanted to verify that the voter logs were accurate. Of the homes that I was able to contact, more than 10% of them had issues. I had a home on Central Avenue where both husband and wife did not vote in 2020 elections, yet the official voter checklist showed they voted absentee. They were in shock, and they thanked me for helping to correct the situation. Another home I visited had 4 people voted absentee from that address. But the problem is there's only one person that lived there. There were even votes from property addresses that didn't exist in the town of Rye. How is this even possible? The majority of both Democrats and Republicans alike don't trust our elections. You guys can fix this. As you're probably aware, LHS Associates is a privately owned company that programs over 80% of the New Hampshire election via their AccuVote Diebold Dominion machines. LHS services these machines, the microchips, and memory data cards. They operate independently without any state oversight or audits by the state of New Hampshire, the Secretary of State, or the Department of Justice. The LHS technology in my town is over 20 years old. Is this really the best we can do? So I went to see my local town clerk to learn more. She actually initially seemed willing to help. She showed me where the AccuVote machines were locked up in the canvas bags. So I went on to, she went on to state that these machines were purchased before her arrival, which was almost 18 years ago. When I told my town clerk about all the voter registration issues that I had heard about in Rye, she said, "Oh yeah, they've got all kinds of problems going on in that town." I returned a few days later and asked her if I could look at the activity logs for the past 3 years for the canvas bags, memory cards, and microchip counting devices. I also wanted a copy of the purchase contract and service agreement for the LHS Dominion machine. I gave her this request in person on December 21st. It was during the Christmas holiday time, so she said, "Give me a couple of weeks and I'll get you all the information." So after 2 weeks, I called her back. She's now telling me, "I'm going to be so busy I can't get back to your request for several months now." I'm just one citizen. I have a right to know law. I want to see what's going on in my town, and I'm stonewalled. What can I do? Do I got to go to my selectman? Do I come to you guys? Well, I don't even know where to go. I don't trust, nor do I have any confidence in the current voting system. Why is there no post-election audit in New Hampshire? It's because there's no legislation directing any of our towns to do so. But this is where you guys can come in and make a difference. You know, you're in this hall with these amazing people that have been here, and you guys have the ability to install change, and I think you should take that seriously. The only way to know what needs to be fixed This to do a statewide forensic audit and to put in future safeguards so that this monopoly on voting machine programming does not continue to go unchecked. Or what I would personally like to see is for us to get rid of all the machines and go back to hand counting. That's what Canada does, Great Britain, France, and Australia. However, I am concerned about how the Wyndham audit was conducted and who was involved. I ask that you all support the proposed House Bill 1473 to restore confidence in the people. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. We must, and you must, restore voting integrity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Tricia Jorgensen. Jill Shaw will be next. Tricia Jorgensen. Thanks.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. I'm gonna for this to stay in.
He was supposed to put it down.
There we go. He was tall.
All right.
Okay, thanks for letting me speak. I'm Trish Jorgensen. I live in Northfield, New Hampshire.
I need you to get closer to the mic.
Closer to the mic.
Yeah,
I might
thank
get
you,
too
better.
loud. So a couple different things. Personal experiences. I have a daughter who's in her 30s who was running with the 2020 election. So I spent a lot of time standing out with her banner and canvassing my neighborhoods, different things in my towns that are local to me where she would be being elected, hopefully. I did this and I realized that the day of election, I went to, she belongs to the town I reside in, and she also represents a ward in another town. So I go to both polling places or voting places because I want to see and help her and be present. As I'm doing this, I'm watching the citizens who voted for you all, by the way, so you got here somehow, and I would think voter integrity matters to you as well. But as I'm noticing the citizens, they're paying attention to the signs I'm holding and the party that she's tagged to, and they're coming out kind of gesturing or commenting to me about how they voted. Both towns. So I go home that night after she gets her results, and I say to my husband, it was an 80-20 in our favor. Mind you, I'm an independent voter, have been my whole life. I've been voting since I was 18. I came off the Mayflower. I have Abraham Lincoln as a descendant. I'm a descendant of Abraham Lincoln. I can DAR, all that stuff. Voting matters, and it's what our country stands behind. So, she wins the election, but I tell my husband that night, 80-20, no doubt. I go and I pay attention to the numbers as they come through, and I take pictures. I still have them on my computer of the different towns around me and how their numbers looked. Mind you, my town has no machine. I'm grateful for that. I don't think machines should be, but the ward where her other ward is does have machines. She still won, and her numbers were good out of that town. But it just kind of showed me the towns that were around me and what their numbers looked like. To me, it seemed a little odd, but in some of these, but I didn't, what am I gonna do about it? So then my daughter says, Mom, the committee, our county committee, you need to run. So I said, well, what do you mean run? What does it entail? I have never done this before. She'd never been a representative before, but she won, and she's one of you. And I'm grateful she's one of you, but she has integrity, and she has a moral code that I gave her and planted in her, and I hope you all have one too. So she says, Mom, you need to run for our county committee. I said, okay, what's it entail? And I proceed. I had to write a letter. I had to interact with a couple of the people that were in charge of the committee, and I ran, and I won. So now I'm part of the committee for the Republican county. But when I go to do this, I had been an independent voter prior to my daughter running. I changed my party affiliation on day of voting, and I did not go back like I always had my whole life, and I'm not a young person. So,
Excuse me, Ms. Jorgensen, a couple of things. One, you're at your time that I've basically been giving everybody else, so if you can wrap up in
I
about
will.
a minute. Okay.
So the Republican committee member, whose head, calls me and tells me I'm not registered as a party. I said, what do you mean I'm not registered as a party? Well, in the state thing where we go look to see what you registered as, you're a Democrat. I said, I've never voted Democrat, and I've always been an independent voter. My husband's listed as an independent voter, but I'm listed as a Democrat in the state's information. Well, how the hell did that happen? My daughter ran on the Republican ticket. She's a Republican state house rep. I am a Republican, and I had to go to my town, and my town clerk says to me, I remember that you didn't change back after because of your daughter. This is my town. We don't even use machines. She knows me. So she says, well, we're gonna have to change that. So I had to get in touch with the moderators of the checklist in my town. They only work once a month or something. It took me 3 weeks to get it done, and I had to take pictures of that being done so that I could send it to the committee that I am now on to prove my affiliation. It's ridiculous. There's so many things wrong with elections in this state. It's a simple thing. And I never have been a Democrat and shouldn't have ever been listed as one.
Thank you. If you could wrap up, please.
Yeah, I'm done. I just think that you guys need to support anything with voter integrity because there's a lot wrong here.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to be turning the meeting over to the Vice Chair, Wayne McDonald, who will conduct the rest of the hearing with about 4 minutes for each speaker. And then we have a few more bills to go on. And I'll personally thank you all for here, and the committee will be taking these bills up in executive. So at this point, Jill Shaw, I think I had you speaking next, and I'm going to turn the meeting over. Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for having giving me this opportunity to speak to you, and I appreciate all that you do. I appreciate everyone in here that you've come here to speak, and all the people who spoke before. I'm just so moved. And I just want to say things are really bad when the people who want to be left alone get involved. Okay, so I'm here to support Bill 1473. I got involved with the New Hampshire Voter Integrity Group about 5.5 months ago. I've been working on my computer, working with files, getting in really deep into these lists. I've looked up 6,879 total people in a database to try to verify their birth, find their birth years, verify their addresses. Let me repeat the number again. 6,879 total people, and not just seeing them once. Okay, what I did is, when I went through to check their birth years, I found out that they weren't at the address anymore on the list I had, the list of the registered voters. And so I made a note, move to somewhere else, move to Massachusetts, move to Oregon, move to somewhere else in New Hampshire. Well, then after a while, I just forget, if you stayed in New Hampshire, good for you. Okay, but I kept a list of who moved to the other states. And then I thought, but I don't know that these people voted. So finally, I got the list of who actually voted. So I went back to the towns, went back to the list and looked it up, and more often than not, like 99% of the time, I was finding These people who moved voted from their address. How did that happen? Did their absentee vote get forwarded? Should they be forwarded? I don't know. Did they fly back to New Hampshire because that's their mama's house and they stayed with their mama and voted? I don't know. I'm not making any accusations. And there were a bunch of people I couldn't even find at all. So then, let me just say, when I got to Somersworth, what I found was the people who moved there were so many that weren't on the list anymore. And there was one person who had moved to Maine, but when whoever was working the voting, they wrote down New Hampshire driver's license number. That was the only time I saw that a record was made that someone had used a New Hampshire driver's license after they had moved to another state. And I mean, it was just, so what happened to these other people? I don't know, but all in all, and then we got all these people who moved. 337 people moved to Massachusetts, 213 people moved to Maine. Somehow they still voted, maybe they drove back. But people moved to Alaska, people moved to Idaho. Anyway, I'm sorry to get so emotional. I mean, this whole thing is so unnerving. But anyway, let me just sum it up. 6,879 total people, 1,065 moved, 244 plus I couldn't even find at all. Okay, and when I say they moved, I mean, I have a way of looking people up, and it puts their current address, and address 1, address 2, address 3. And, so address 10 is like 15 years before, 8 years before. There were people who hadn't been in New Hampshire for that long, and they're still on the voting list. That ain't right. It just doesn't sound right. So even with me not putting down everybody I couldn't find at all, it still comes up to like 20% of people who the votes surely should be in question because they don't even live at their address anymore. They don't even live in New Hampshire anymore. Okay, let me just say, they don't even live in New Hampshire anymore. So please, please fix it. For God's sake, for the sake of our country, for the sake of your children, for the sake of everyone who's died for freedom, I really beg you, please consider this bill and a serious forensic audit and whatever laws need to be passed to make the elections honest for everybody. They need to be honest so that the people's will is heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next person signed up to testify is Lynn Briggs.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Briggs, and I'm from Amherst, New Hampshire, and I'm going to testify to what I saw and what I found and what I reported in the general election. In Amherst, there are 3 Dominion AccuVote Diebold machines, all owned, programmed, wiped, and taken care of by LHS, who, oh, by the way, takes care of all the AccuVote Diebold Dominion machines in New England. There is one machine in the town of Amherst, and the date on the top of the tally tape says October 23rd. Last time I checked, the election was November 3rd. To date, nobody can explain that. I have pictures of it. I have photographs of it. It has been given to a couple of senators. It has been given to a couple of lawyers. To date, no one has explained it. There is no reason for it. That alone deserves an audit. There is no excuse. Oh, we counted them early? I don't know any laws that say you can count absentee votes or any votes early. The other 2 machines have the correct date, but 1 out of the 3 machines has double the amount of Democrat votes. It was explained to me that they were all Democrat absentee votes. So I went to the moderator, and he said, oh, we put all those absentee votes into that machine. Well, no, you don't, because I observed 2 or 3 people walking the absentee votes to whatever machine was available so that they would not inconvenience the voters who were voting that day, which is the correct thing to do. Lie number 1. He then went on to explain that there were absolutely double the amount of Democrat absentee votes. Again, incorrect. I and another friend have personally gone through the absentee vote list, compared it to the registered list, and there is not double the amount of Democrat absentee votes. All right, moving on. Let me put my glasses on, I'm sorry. I would also like to know, hey, I've had several towns come to me and ask, you know, hey, did you see this? Hey, did you see that? Can you explain it? I don't know a lot about it. I've just kind of had it thrown on me and dumped on me, and I'm doing the best I can do. Where is the contract between the state and the towns that says that we, the citizens, we the voters, more importantly, we the taxpayers, continue and will continue to pay for the servicing, the programming, the paperwork, et cetera, associated with the Diebold AccuVote machines? I can't find anywhere the contract in any town. I can't find anywhere where we, the voters, said we would accept this, that we would continue to vote for it, or we agreed with it. That's a problem right there. All right. We have 2 people in our town, in Amherst, that were given absentee ballots, Democrat absentee ballots. They are both registered Republican. Too many mistakes being made. Whoops, I'm sorry, here, have another one. What happened to the 2 Democrat absentee ballots with their names on them? Did they destroy them? Where are they? We don't know, we can't find them. We have 1 person that we've investigated on our own, and they voted from California. We have 400 and something same-day registrations. They have not been gone through. The Secretary of State has not sent out postcards, letters, or anything to find out. So we're going to have to canvass it on our own. What do our tax dollars go for? What are we paying for? I don't know. I'd like somebody to answer that. The AccuVote Diebold Dominion machines were temporary when they first started. They've now been here 20 plus years. Again, when did we vote for them? When did we say we'd pay to service for them? And oh, by the way, who's the person signing the check in every town to pay LHS, which is throughout New England?
Okay,
My
could
last
you-
point
could you-
is
okay.
the U.S. Constitution does not confer the right to vote. It is the state of New Hampshire. You must be born here or naturalized here. I am an American citizen. I was born in Washington, D.C. I can say that. Most of you cannot. Most of you cannot. I became a naturalized citizen in this state, and I think that the Constitution of the state of New Hampshire must be followed at all costs and not twisted and turned for whatever anybody wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, also signed up to testify is Alvin C.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Alvin C. I live in Loudon, New Hampshire. I'm speaking for myself. On this particular bill, I'm very concerned that because 2 elections, at least 1 election has already happened after the general election for which this audit is for, either the town elections last spring or the city elections last fall. So this may make it hard to do a complete forensic analysis. However, it is possible to do a hand recount of the 3 offices specified in the bill, and that would certainly go a long way to comparing it with what the machines had reported. And from the previous testimony on this bill, I think one other thing that needs to be audited is the voters, especially the absentee voters, where they voted from, where they claim they reside, and also any deceased voters who still managed to turn in a ballot anyway. That is something worthy of an audit. That's all I have for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. C. And the final speaker that I know of is, and I'm having a little trouble reading the name, A. Brandano? Brandano, okay. I have bad handwriting, too. Yours is better than mine. I'm just not as familiar with it. You indicated 5 minutes, sir. Again, we're asking people to try to keep it at 4.
Yes, sir. First of all, thank you very much. My name is Al Brandano. I'm from Kensington, New Hampshire. Independent voter for 33 years. I did a citizen audit in the town of Kensington and was, honest to God, it's hard for me because I know all the people there. And the more I started to look and the more we started to find out, and the policy and procedures were totally off the rails. And it's interesting because I'm working with the Secretary of State and the Department of Justice on just this issue. And one of the things that I found is that the town clerks and the moderators don't have official training. There's no certification for them. They don't have to attend any classes. They do by choice, but it's not required. And the fact that they don't have any formal training and or audit, the Secretary of State nor the Department of Justice audits any of the policy and procedures until there's an issue. So there's no preliminary look at anything. What I want to share with you more than anything, as I look around this room, I'm so impressed by these people on the wall, and with you. You all have this responsibility. Human beings realize that there's truth and trust, as empirical or scientific. Fear always drives one they choose first. Fear leads to mistrust, and this is the most dangerous miscalculation of all. Because trust is like a soap bubble. Once it's gone, it never really returns. We are well beyond the tipping point of trust, regardless of who you blame or why. It's really too late. So I share with you a line from the Bible to make my point. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and give unto God what is God. In today's words, give unto the politicians what is the politicians', and give unto the voters their sacred rights of voting. When a politician takes this trust, it's called totalitarianism. Be bold, please be bold. Do what is inherently human and simple. The question before us is, do we trust LHS or do we trust our voters? Do we trust the people in this room or we trust LHS? I think you know the answer to that. Please don't be the party or the person to break the sacred bubble of trust. Please vote to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have no other pink cards for this particular bill, so I am closing the hearing on this legislation on 1473, and we are moving on to House Bill 1467. I'd like to recognize Representative Yakubovich, who is the prime sponsor.
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thanks for welcoming me here. I'm from Hooksett, representing Merrimack 24, Michael Yakubovich, for the record. My bill should be much simpler. It's hopefully it helps the concerns of the citizens. It's more of a proactive bill than a reactive. I don't know what to do with the past necessarily, but this is looking towards the future. And it does have to do with recounts. So whenever the recounts are requested at the state level currently, all I'm asking here is to recount an additional race. So for instance, if a state rep race is being recounted, the state rep for that district or for that town can request for the president to be recounted, or for senator or the governor. Anything that appears on the ballot is fair game, because we already present those ballots, we post them on the display, the helpers, what are we called? Whoever is looking at the ballots can look at an additional column and tally it up, and that'll give us a data point for future use. This is not questioning anything in the ballot necessarily, this is just collecting data points from that same ballot that's already been pulled out of the box, brought into the Secretary of State office, is being looked at by everybody, by both parties. And it's right there on the display. So I believe this information will give us something useful when there are concerns. Will bring a little more transparency into the elections and how the votes are tallied. So the recount requests are not being affected by this bill. Why the recounts are being conducted is not affected. How many recounts there will be, the reasons when, nothing like that has changed. This is only when the recounts happen This bill gives means to the Secretary of State and the requester to recount an additional race that already appears on the ballot. So I view this effort as being very marginal. So it may take a little bit more time to look at each ballot because you need to tally up an additional column. But since it's all there already in the room, everything is set up, people are there in the room, I think this will be useful to bring some more trust into the elections. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Are you willing to take questions?
Yes, please.
Any questions from committee members? Yes, Representative Barry.
It's good to see you, Representative. So just want to clarify. So this bill, because you and I talked about this, if I remember right. So this bill basically, while a recount is happening, let's say for state rep, right? We would look at another office while doing that. Does it specify which office we'll look at?
It does. It gives a choice. So the choice is given to the Secretary of State. Thank you for the question. So the Secretary of State, he will pick one office, and then the requester of the recount, like the state rep, is able to pick another office if he is so willing, or he doesn't have to.
Okay. So I'm sorry. Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Sure, the person being recounted gets to pick an office, and the Secretary of State gets to pick an office. So there's two offices. One.
Correct. At
Okay.
most, but
So the state rep hypothetically could pick the president if they wanted to.
Yes.
They could pick county commissioner. Okay.
Yes.
And the Secretary of State's office could pick any other office they want to as well.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. So it's up to 2 offices. So, yeah, no more than 2.
Any other questions from committee members? Okay, thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Also signed up to testify in this bill is Elvin C.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name's Alvin C., and I live in Loudon, New Hampshire, and I'm here and speak in favor of this bill. A couple of things. As the bill states on line 6, 7, and 8, the Secretary of State or his designee would select one of 5 offices, which are the top 5. So it'd be President, U.S. Senate, U.S. Representative, Governor, or Executive Council. That would be for all the ballots that happen to be brought in for all the recounts. The individual candidate who filed for a recount can ask for another office that would be on the ballots within his district, not all the ballots, just within his recount. And that could be anything on the ballot. Just as an example, after the November elections in 2020, there were 16 recounts asked for, and it affected towns in 7 counties, a total of 55 towns and cities. So this gives us a reasonably broad sample, but also since we don't know exactly who's going to need to file for a recount, it's somewhat random. It's not perfectly random, but I would say somewhat random in what ones would be selected. It would be prudent for the people involved to choose which offices are going to ask for the audit a day or more ahead of time, so that the secretary can prepare tally sheets and whatever other materials are needed so that they can do this in an expeditious process. The intent was to do the recount and audits simultaneously with recounts so that the ballots didn't have to be handled a second time for any other reason. It just, while the recount is being done, it does add a little bit of extra time to read off extra names on the ballot and do the check marks on the tally sheets. But I don't think it is as drastic as what it appears to say in the fiscal note. It will take a little bit more time, yes it will, but and that's pretty much what I have to say on this. I did talked with Secretary Scanlon when he was here earlier and asked him if he had any opinion on this, and he seemed to be favorable to it, but there were a couple of details that he thought ought to be changed. I was sort of surprised that he didn't stay to speak on the bill. And that's not an official quotation from him.
Okay. Understood.
So, just as a indication here, there were, last time there were 3 state senate districts and 12 state representative districts and an executive council recount that was requested. So that covers a lot of the state. Usually don't get a executive council recount, so that probably would be a lower number next time or other times. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. C. Any questions for Mr. C? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I have no one else signed up to testify on this bill. Is there anyone here in the hall that would like to? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on House Bill 1467 and open the hearing on House Bill 1008 and recognize the prime sponsor, Representative Sweeney, from our committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, House Election Law, for hearing this. I'll be very brief. This bill is actually trying to form a commission to have a real in-depth conversation about how we structure our municipal government here in New Hampshire, comparing the data on how we see turnout in elections at the city level versus the town level. We currently have a number of abilities within state statute that allow towns using local control to determine how they're structured. The base level is Board of Selectmen. Towns can then adopt a town charter to keep a selectman form of government, adopt a town council with either a budgetary meeting or a town council that sets the budget itself, or move into a city form of government that either has a city council or a board of aldermen. City charters or town charters control the length of office individuals are elected to serve in. They determine when the election dates are held. If you're a town government, you can have an election in March, April, or May, or you can move it to November, currently under state law, if you have 2-year terms, essentially, or 4-year terms, as long as your town local election doesn't coincide with the state elections. All of our cities typically have the elections in November of the off year for either 2 or a 4-year term in terms of Nashua's mayor's office, in order to not have elections coincide with the state elections. That's all set by statute. This commission, my intent is to have a bipartisan, open, public discussion. The original bill had makeup with 3 members of the House of Representatives appointed by the Speaker, 3 members of the State Senate appointed by the Senate, 3 members of the commission would be appointed by the governor, and 3 members of the commission would be appointed by the Secretary of State's office. In conversations with the New Hampshire Municipal Association, I have sent around an amendment that I drafted to the bill that would add an additional member that is a representative of municipal government appointed by the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Because there really is, I have no agenda with this bill. I want to have, over the course of the commission's lifespan, a real in-depth conversation with a number of stakeholders from across the spectrum, from cities, from towns, from everywhere in New Hampshire, to examine how the state structures our municipal government and the election calendar therein. So that is the honest and pure goal of the commission I'm proposing. I'm happy to accept any questions.
Yes, Representative Terosian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Representative, for taking the question. So, for clarification, the structure in the calendar, is it looking to achieve a uniform calendar among cities and towns? I'm not quite clear on exactly what you hope the commission will ascertain.
I'm looking at the commission as not to recommend a uniform structure or anything of the sort. I still strongly believe in local control, and I believe that local communities should have the ability to determine what they can do under the current law. What I'd like the commission to do, and what I think one thing it would be tasked with per the provision, is to examine what are turnouts like in city elections that are held in November. How does that compare to town elections that take place largely in March? Is there a way to make sure that across the board we see higher participation in our local elections? I think we all know it's no secret. Our local elections are typically the lowest turnout elections we have. And I think having this commission study how we govern our laws and also compare it to how states in the region and across the country structure their local elections and how they elect their local governments, and compare it to their turnout and whatnot, I think would just be helpful to gather that information. And then any recommended changes would be in the commission report, but allow all the data that the commission collects and researches to be out there for any legislator to take and run a bill with on their own.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Representative.
Thank you. Thank you.
Representative Muirhead?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Is turnout the number one problem that that creates the occasion for this, or are there other problems or questions that you hope the commission would look into?
So I would say generally, if you try to look up turnout numbers in New Hampshire, you can easily find them for state elections, because that all data is calculated and collected at the Secretary of State's website. We don't have a similar mechanism to track turnout at local elections. We could go in town by town, but it certainly isn't simple. But I'd also want to look at the incumbency rates at local levels. How often does somebody get reelected over and over again? How does that compare for cities versus town? If there's more turnover, if there's less turnover, how that produces it, and really anything else the commission would want to study.
Any other questions from committee members for Representative Sweeney? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else want to testify on this bill? I have no pink cards indicating that. Anyone here in the hall want to testify on HB 1008? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on HB 1008 and open the public hearing on HB 1082. And in doing so, I'm going to recognize the prime sponsor of this legislation, Representative Catherine Prudhomme O'Brien.
Hi. I'm going to read to you what I wrote back in 2019 when this was first presented. I still think it's a good bill. It's the same language and the same things apply. This bill ought to pass to preserve the integrity and nonpartisan nature of the offices of Secretary of State and Treasurer. The two other states where these offices are elected by their legislature have either outlawed the practice of forming political action committees for these offices, and that's in Maine, or the creation of PACs to campaign for these offices is considered by the legislature to be so it's a tough word to say out loud, antithetical to good governance that the current Secretary of State reports that it would not be done. And that current Secretary of State at that time was Trey Haggart, and that was Tennessee. Now, one of the things that came to my notice back in 2019 was that with the Maine law, I wanted to get a little bit more information because Maine outlawed these PACs in 1985. So I spoke to Bruce Peliquin, who's, you might know him as the former congressman from Maine. But prior to that, he was the Maine state treasurer, and even prior to that, he was in the pension management business. And when he was speaking to the Maine state treasurer, and this is back in the mid-'80s, that man is Samuel Shapiro, about pension management services when Shapiro told him he had a PAC, that he wanted Peliquin to donate to. The PAC was intended to help elect the same state legislatures who would later vote for him for state treasurer. Peliquin told me his jaw nearly hit the floor, and he said it was the most unethical thing he could imagine. a lot was written about this and spoken about this a few years ago here in New Hampshire because we had a candidate for state, Secretary of State, who did raise a lot of money. And when you looked at how much money he raised in his PAC, which I should say he originally said he was going to use to help elect Democrats, but then walked that back, and you do the math on that, he raised about $1,200 per person in the legislature. Now, in my town, we have 10 state representatives. To his credit, this man was pretty open and available to us, and I got to talk to him on the phone a few times, or at least once that I recall, and he offered to come to my community and talk to state representatives that wanted to meet him in person. Myself and another state representative came and spoke to him at a church. There were cookies, there was coffee, we spoke for about an hour, but for the amount of money he raised per capita, you know, by per capita, and I'm saying per 10 state representatives in Derry, that cost $12,000. Now, I don't care if he's coming from the Canadian border. It shouldn't, and those cookies, they were delicious, but that should not cost $12,000 he doesn't need the $12,000. There's a point of time when you're elected in November, and then there's Organization Day in December. Anyone who's interested in being Secretary of State can call each and every one of us. Each and every state representative, you can call us. He doesn't even have to meet with us in person. That would be nice, but he doesn't have to do so, or she. So I'm trying to head this off in the future, and I don't know what the money has been spent on. Since then, the man raised about $300,000 to run for Secretary of State, came pretty close to winning that election, if we all recall, and I also have a former state rep. This was a bipartisan bill, and a former state representative from the Seacoast area, Jim Splain. He was in favor of this as well, and even wrote an editorial in I think it was the In-Depth NH that I would share with anyone, and I did back when I first brought this bill up, asking that this law be passed as well. So this is a bipartisan bill. The lead sponsor on it back in 2019 was a Democrat. I just wanted to bring it back quickly in the second year and get this done. So I didn't go around looking for other sponsors for this bill, but I'm sure I could have found many of them, and of course, again, Democrats as well as myself. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? I see none, Representative, so thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the hall who wants to testify on this bill? Besides Representative O'Brien. We're looking at House Bill 1082. I have received no pink cards, so I am going to close the public hearing on House Bill 1082 and open the public hearing on House Bill 1242. And I recognize Representative Paul Bergeron from the committee. We've had 3 committee members sponsor bills today: Representative Pudham O'Brien, Representative Sweeney, and now Representative Bergeron. Welcome, Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be as brief as I can. First of all, this bill would require that, would change the timeline for the charter amendment process. The timeline for the charter amendment process was put into law generally prior to federal requirements that absentee ballots be distributed 45 days prior to an election. And so this bill attempted to address that so that if a community was holding a special municipal election on the date of the state primary, the absentee ballots for both the municipal election and the state primary election would be available 45 days prior to the election. I sponsored the bill after conversation with the Manchester City Clerk, and I later learned that over in the Senate, Senate Bill 423, sponsored by Senators D'Alessandro, Kavanaugh, Soucy, and Representative Long, was also introduced, and there's overlap between that bill and mine. So I would respectfully request that the committee find House Bill 1242 inexpedient to legislate, and when the Senate bill crosses over, we can take a look at it at that time. I see no reason for the committee to be spending time working on 2 bills.
Okay, so you do want this, you're recommending when we meet in executive session be found ITL?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, I don't know if you want to take any questions at this point then. Probably not. Probably there are none, but, okay. All right. All right, thank you. And since this bill is expected to be ruled in next committee to legislate, I'm assuming no one is here to testify on it. We have received no pink cards. So I will close the public hearing on HB 1242. Those are all of the bills that were noticed to the public for today. So I'm going to adjourn this meeting of this hearing of the Election Law Committee, and we will be resuming tomorrow on other noticed bills. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming.